Tier 1 zombies are the easiest kind of undead threat, and honestly, they feel more like strange interruptions to normal life than anything close to an apocalypse. When you look at stories in this tier, you notice right away that the world never actually loses control. Something might go wrong in one place, but the problem never expands beyond that small area. You see it clearly in the way these zombies behave. They move slowly, they react poorly, and they can barely get through basic obstacles. In Santa Clarita Diet, the whole thing feels more like a strange family problem than the start of an apocalypse. The zombies retain their full personalities and social awareness, but are cooked by constant decay and an insatiable need for fresh human flesh that makes them more of a liability than a threat. Rather than evolving into tactical apex predators, the infected become increasingly impulsive and mentally unstable, turning what could be a horror epidemic into a dark and comedic struggle to maintain suburban normalcy while literally falling apart. In iZombie, people are literally living with the condition and still doing their jobs. The zombies gain modest physical enhancements and memory-absorbing brain powers, but they're completely dependent on a steady supply of brains to avoid devolving into mindless Romeros, which turns the infection into, let's just say, a manageable, chronic condition rather than an extinction event. The show treats zombification more like a political minority issue contained within Seattle's borders. Even the school outbreak in Cooties feels more like a wild day at school rather than anything that could actually destroy society. These zombies can bite and cause injuries, but they're never taking down cities or creating huge armies. Zombies in Zombies Ate My Neighbors are textbook Tier 1 cannon fodder. Slow, fragile, melee-only enemies with mad low HP that go down to almost any weapon in your arsenal, including the starter water gun. Their only real threat comes from being spawned in large swarms within tight, maze-like suburban maps, where they can box players in through sheer numbers rather than individual power. Even then, they're consistently outclassed by the game's more dangerous monsters like chainsaw maniacs, werewolves, and aliens to pad out Dr. Tongue's roster rather than pose any serious challenge on their own. What really connects all the zombies in this tier is how limited they are. They stay in one place. The infection doesn't jump across towns, it doesn't travel across the country, and it definitely doesn't reach the level of ending the world. The moment someone pulls out a machine gun and starts shooting, the outbreak is basically finished. Tier 2 zombies are still manageable, but they're definitely not a joke anymore. They're not the mild and harmless types from the first tier. These zombies can actually cause real damage if people aren't paying enough attention. They definitely won't destroy the whole world, but they damn sure can f up a town, take over a whole area, and push things far enough that a good amount of people start panicking. A good example of this is The Dead Don't Die. The movie has zombies that are slow, basic, and stuck in the same habits before they died, but the way the outbreak spreads is what makes it dangerous. The movie is basically a play on how fracking disrupted the Earth's axis and caused the dead to rise. So, when everything is said and done, it's humans' fault and ironic doom as a civilization consumed with materialistic things instead of what really matters in life and what's good for the actual planet. The town starts falling apart, not because the zombies are strong, but because there are enough of them to overwhelm everyone who isn't paying attention. Blood Quantum fits this tier for a different reason. The zombies here are more aggressive and the infection spreads fast. What makes this one interesting is that people from the native land are immune, so the infection doesn't take everyone out evenly. But even with that advantage, the zombies here hit harder than the ones in the lowest tier. They don't hesitate, they don't wait around, and if they get inside your area, just know that it's over for you. Daybreak also belongs here because even though the show is full of humor and crazy moments, the zombies themselves are actually dangerous. They might not be sprinting around, but they move fast enough and hit hard enough to destroy cars, shops, and can get through buildings and compounds. The outbreak in the show isn't tiny. It spreads through a whole city, shuts it down, and leaves the kids running things. The zombies are still dumb, but they're kind of aggressive, and if you let your guard down for even a few seconds, they stack up on you, and that's their advantage. What really makes all Tier 2 zombies is the feeling that things could get much worse if people stay unorganized. These outbreaks don't stay trapped in one building or one small neighborhood. They spread through towns and big cities. You can survive them, but you actually have to work for it. Tier 3 is where zombies transition from mindless obstacles into persistent threats that force you to actually think about survival. What unifies this tier isn't raw power or speed, it's awareness. These zombies track movement, respond to stimuli, and maintain focus on targets in ways that turn every mistake into a potential death sentence. They're not tactical geniuses, but they're observant enough that noise discipline and planning become non-negotiable. If you look at We Are Zombies, that movie is basically a world where people got used to zombies, but the zombies themselves are still annoying to deal with in day-to-day life. The living impaired shuffled through daily life as a nuisance underclass until Project Zoltan gas flips them feral, transforming decaying bodies into aggressive mobs that swarm public spaces. They're not superhuman, just relentless in numbers. On that same note, Pride and Prejudice in Zombies elevates the threat slightly, with zombies that can sprint, use, I would say, basic tactics, and even infiltrate Regency society. The world is basically cooked by a zombie plague, and instead of just waiting to die, they train and fight to keep the zombies at bay. Trained fighters like Elizabeth Bennet get busy in London and throw all that helpless shit out the window. The durability factor separates the higher end of this tier. Overlord's Nazi super soldiers are occult experiments gone wrong, reanimated with enhanced strength and horrifying mutations that let them tank a lot of shit thrown at them. Dead Snow, in that same breath, cranks this up with coordinated, weapon-wielding Nazi zombies that ambush victims in Norwegian mountains, showing enough intelligence to strategize and retreat, while shrugging off damage that would drop a human instantly. Still, small groups with preparation and heavy firepower can take them down. They're boss-class enemies, not extinction events. Then you have movies like Night of the Living Dead, where zombies move slowly but stay locked onto people. If they see you, they won't forget you or let you go that easy. They don't smash through walls like super zombies, but they apply pressure. This is also what makes surviving this tier kinda tricky. You can escape, but you can't make noise. You can't take breaks, and you definitely ain't relying on speed alone. You need to be calm and play it smart. In The Battery, they treat zombies like background threats that gather silently around noise or movement, play music too loud, or sleep in the wrong spot, and you wake up surrounded. Apocalypse Z collapses entire nations through swarm and just pure infection speed. This is a bad situation to be in smaller groups. Then there's the climate horror angle in ZM, where glacier melting bacteria infects fish and triggers hyper-aggressive mutations in Bangkok. These zombies are fast, feral, and visually gross with jagged teeth and fish-like features, but their real escalation comes from water exposure, which transforms them into monstrous monkfish hybrids. The protagonist, Singh, fights through hordes using Muay Thai, which tells you everything. Skilled humans with martial training can still put belt to ass in direct confrontation. Surviving Tier 3 means accepting constant paranoia, no loud celebrations, no careless movement, no staying put. You can win, but only if you stay disciplined, stay quiet, and never assume you're safe. Tier 4 is where zombies stop being a survival challenge and start becoming a genuine threat to organized society. What separates this tier from everything below is a brutal combination of speed, aggression, and relentlessness that turns every encounter into a life or death sprint. These aren't shambling corpses you can outpace. They hunt you, and once they lock on, stopping them requires serious firepower or creative thinking. Black Summer sets the tone perfectly. These zombies are rage-infected sprinters that react instantly to movement and sound, turning every mistake into a potential death sentence. One wrong turn, one loud breath, and you're surrounded by bodies moving faster than most people can run. High School of the Dead cranks up the horror with massive hordes that overwhelm through sheer density and pursuit speed, though their reliance on sound creates exploitable weaknesses. Stay quiet and you can slip past entire crowds. Still, Their numbers and stamina make open areas a nightmare. Even the lighter entries acknowledge this danger. Zombieland plays the apocalypse for laughs, but those zombies still sprint, climb, and ambush with enough ferocity that getting cornered means you're done. The humor doesn't change the math. You better stick to those rules like double tap and cardio or you're cooked. Without weapons and strategy, you're not surviving a direct fight. Zom 100 leans into this tension by showing zombies that can be outmaneuvered with gear and planning, but strip away those advantages and they'll swarm you into oblivion. The VR and game entries reinforce the tier's core identity. Death Horizon and Operation Undead frame zombies as relentless shooters that pressure through speed and numbers, not raw tankiness. Headshots work, but miss once and they close the distance before you reload. Hunger takes that same mindset, but throws it into a Napoleonic era where literally any and everything can get you killed. Individually beatable, but collectively overwhelming, especially in tight spaces where their aggression compounds. Ill pushes the body horror angle with gnarly ass mutations that stretch, twist, and absorb damage in ways that make close combat borderline suicidal, though heavy firepower still drops them. Some of the scariest creatures I've seen in games since Silent Hill. What makes Tier 4 legitimately dangerous is that traditional survival tactics start failing. You can't just barricade and wait them out. They'll break through or find another way in. You can't rely on stealth alone, because their aggression means they're constantly patrolling and reacting. Open streets, highways, and empty buildings become death traps because groups of sprinters can cross distances faster than you can process the threat. Surviving this tier requires constant movement, pre-planned escape routes, and never fighting unless absolutely necessary. Stay in groups, use elevation and choke points, and always assume they're closer than you think. Tier 5 is where zombie outbreaks transition from survivable disasters into continent-spanning extinction events. This tier isn't just how dangerous individual zombies are, it's how the infection itself becomes a system that adapts, spreads, and reclaims territory faster than humanity can respond. These are threats where military intervention buys time at best, and every victory is temporary because the horde, the virus, or the nightmare just keeps evolving. The core is scale and momentum. Days Gone's Freaker Hordes and Zombie Army Trilogy's Occult Nazi Legions both demonstrate how sheer numbers transform landscapes into enemy territory. Freakers move in coordinated waves of hundreds that react to sound and heat like a living organism, while the reanimated Wehrmacht deploy in massive formations with ranged weapons and supernatural resilience. Both force the same brutal reality. You can't quote-unquote clear an area anymore, because they reclaim ground faster than you can fortify it. Highways become migration routes, towns become nesting grounds, and every quiet moment is just the calm before the next wave. And talking about zombie armies, they literally have generals and ranking systems where generals have special abilities and will actually kill zombies under them for not getting with the program. Adaptation is also a key element in what separates Tier 5 from everything below. Dying Light showcases this through evolutionary pressure. Biters are manageable in daylight, but virals sprint across rooftops, and volatiles emerge at night as apex hunters that outrun parkour, tank gunfire, and force survivors into permanent stealth. In Plague Inc., you've got the Necroa virus, a virus that literally upgrades mid-outbreak with cold resistance, horde tactics, and bullet immunity as humanity scrambles for cures. The infection doesn't stay static. It learns, evolves, and counters every defensive strategy you develop. What worked yesterday could literally get you killed today. When it comes to environmental control, it becomes the infection's weapon. Dying Light's infected lock the nighttime down so much that stepping outside becomes suicide, while Days Gone's hordes migrate seasonally, meaning safe routes expire, and entire regions flip from manageable to lethal overnight. You're not fighting zombies in our world that we knew. You're trespassing in theirs. All worlds are cooked beyond repair in these scenarios. The psychological shift is what breaks people. Lower tiers let you rest, plan, rebuild, but Tier 5 forces constant movement because staying put means getting overrun. Zombie Army's supernatural resurgence means cleared towns refill with undead. Plague Inc. simulates airports spreading infection faster than governments can lock down borders. Days Gone shows hordes following heat signatures to campsites. There's no endgame where you win back territory, only strategic retreats and temporary safe zones that expire the moment you let your guard down. The shit in Tier 6 is where infections stop being biological and start becoming existential cookouts. What unifies this tier is that these outbreaks don't follow conventional rules. They're planetary scale extinction engines powered by magic, cosmic forces, or hyper-adaptive biology that renders traditional containment impossible. You're not fighting to reclaim territory anymore. You're fighting to delay the inevitable while entire worlds get consumed. Reality warping and zombies is the first nightmare we're talking about in this tier. I want to talk about Call of Duty's Element 115 that doesn't just reanimate corpses, it fractures timelines, corrupts universes through ether connections, and creates outbreaks that can't be permanently stopped because they're tied to multiversal forces beyond human comprehension. The lore behind Call of Duty Zombies is massive and scales way beyond anything that humans can do to stop it. League of Legends Ruination operates similarly. The Black Mist isn't a virus, but a necromantic curse that spreads from the Shadow Isles, corrupting land, animals, and people into spectral undead while transforming entire regions into cursed wastelands. You can't quarantine a curse, and you definitely can't shoot fog that rewrites reality. Another element that defines the tier's unstoppable momentum is replication and just overwhelming numbers. Sonic's metal virus spreads on contact, no bites, no fluids, just touch, turning both organics and machines into mindless zombots that accelerate infection geometrically. Metroid's X-Parasites take this further by perfectly copying their host's memories and abilities before jumping to the next victim, creating an intelligence-stealing plague that gets smarter with every organism it consumes. StarCraft's Zerg infestation operates on planetary digestion. Entire worlds get converted into biomass and creep under hive mind coordination, with each fallen colony feeding the swarm's expansion into neighboring systems. Reminds me of the Gravemind from the Halo universe. Multi-vector adaptation makes containment fantasies laughable. Warframe's infestation comes in 3 apocalyptic flavors. The standard strain consumes ships and moons through techno-organic mutation. The emissary strain hijacks entire communities into flesh cult zealots. And the mutilus strain weaponizes corpus technology by infecting both organics and robotics simultaneously. I'll talk a bit more about other more intense strains in this universe in Tier 7. World of Warcraft's Scourge spreads through grain, water, necromantic blight, and instant resurrection of casualties, meaning every army sent against it just becomes more troops for the Lich King. Fighting these infections doesn't reduce their numbers, it feeds them. Fighting against the infestations in this tier is a losing scenario, any way you want to spin it. The psychological breaking point is acceptance. Lower tiers let you believe in comeback stories and rebuild efforts. Tier 6 forces you to acknowledge that winning means buying time for evacuation ships or deploying reality-bending superweapons like Chaos Emeralds or planet-destroying protocols. Call of Duty resets timelines to contain 115. Metroid destroys entire planets to stop X outbreaks. These aren't solutions, they're last-ditch amputations of infected reality itself. Tier 7 isn't about surviving an outbreak, it's about watching reality itself break down. These infections don't just kill populations or consume planets, they rewrite the fundamental rules of existence until nothing recognizable remains. Time stops working, physics becomes optional, the line between alive and dead stops meaning anything at all. Let's start with why Plants vs. Zombies actually belongs here. Because in the first video, I was literally talking about the first stages of the game in Tier 1, and people in the comments almost had a heart attack. So yeah, on the surface, it's a goofy tower defense game with singing sunflowers and bucket-headed zombies. But when you dig into the actual lore, especially Plants vs. Zombies 2 and Garden Warfare, you realize Dr. Zomboss isn't just some mad scientist. He's a reality-warping necromancer with functional time travel, dimension-hopping technology, and the ability to pull zombie armies from alternate timelines and drop them into any era he wants. He creates temporal paradoxes, destabilizes entire timelines, and wages a planet-wide war that spans past, present, and future simultaneously. In Garden Warfare, it's a global conflict where cities are battlegrounds and the time stream itself is collapsing under the weight of constant interference. If Zomboss existed in a serious setting, he'd be unstoppable because every strategy you deploy has already been countered by a future version of himself. That's not a zombie outbreak, that's weaponized timeline corruption, and it puts him firmly at the top tier. Now, Dead Space's necromorphs operate on a different kind of horror, industrial scale harvesting. The markers are mad overpowered. They don't just reanimate corpses, they broadcast a signal that recombines dead tissue into grotesque, specialized monsters, all serving a hive mind with one goal: convergence. Every outbreak, every ship full of necromorphs, every planetary infestation is just the harvesting phase. Once enough biomass accumulates, it merges into a single organism the size of a moon, a brethren moon. These things don't fight civilizations. They consume entire worlds in one feeding cycle, then move to the next planet like it's just another day in the gym. The ancient marker creators, gone. Human colonies, fuel. It's not an infection you can contain because the whole system is designed to turn sentient species into construction material for cosmic predators. Then there's SCP-001, When Day Breaks, which might be the quietest apocalypse on this list. One day, sunlight, the thing that sustains all life, becomes lethal. Any living thing exposed to it melts into sentient, waxy flesh that stays conscious and tries to drag others into the light. Within 24 hours, 6.8 billion people are either dead or transformed into gelatinous horrors that still remember being human. The SCP Foundation collapses. Containment fails globally. Survivors hide underground, but you can't hide from the sun forever. There's no enemy to fight, no cure to develop, just the slow, inevitable realization that Earth is becoming one continuous ocean of melted flesh. You can't shoot the sun. You can't negotiate with daylight. You just lose. Warframe's advanced infestation strains, Helminth, Grey, and high-end Mutalis, represent bioengineered apocalypse at system scale that I feel is a bit more complicated and deadlier than the strains we covered in Tier 6. Helminth reshapes warframes and biology into weaponized tools. Grey strain amplifies growth into titanic organisms that dwarf starships. Mutalis infects both organics and machinery, turning entire corporate fleets into assimilated war machines. Any one strain unchecked could convert the origin system into a single, unified techno-organic hive. Tier 7 is where survival stops being the goal. You're just trying to stay human while the universe rewrites itself around you.